to get it started. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute here. So I get all the recordings going here. Hey, Gary.
Hello, young people. Except,
Okay, that's live. That's live. That's live.
huh?
Can't hear you, Gary.
Oh,
Oh, do you hear him?
Oh, yeah.
she
That's
didn't
my
want to hear
ears,
me.
man.
I woke up. Nice shirt.
System settings here. Let me see
Oh.
if I can get my ears working.
You can read it backwards, huh?
Hi. EKO.
I'm not getting anything.
You want to say hi?
Oh, who is this?
This is my great grandson.
He is very, very handsome.
You hear that?
Hello, everyone. Everyone, please bear with me. I'm trying to get my ears working here.
Oh, it's precious. Just precious.
I'm going to share my sound.
Okay.
Okay, my sound shared. I've got nothing.
What? You're not coming through soon.
I'm not coming through.
What's that?
Let me try this again.
John the Baptist.
I hear through my hearing aids, but I can't hear anybody else. Gary, say something again.
Gary, say something
I
again.
still can't hear you.
Huh.
All right, let me switch earphones here and try my.
At least your picture's on now.
Huh?
Your picture's on now.
Yeah, but I can't hear anybody.
There's no.
No, I can't even hear you. Let me take my hearing aids out, put these in, see if I can hear them through these.
What are you chewing on? Come on up. See the cats in the background over there?
Yeah, we're all Please bear with me, everyone. All right, try saying something now, Gary.
Okay, Gary, try saying something now.
I got you now.
Uh-oh. Hey,
Okay.
dog, there's a cat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get a dog
Dogs out.
Huh?
Who let the dogs out?
That's a handsome dog.
Okay, we're ready to start. All right, we're 3 minutes and 16 seconds into the meeting, and there's Rodney. All right, let me change the slide and we'll get started. I'll start out tonight. These 40 days were a difficult period for John and his disciples. What was to be the relation of John to Jesus? 100 questions came up for the discussion. Politics and selfish preferment began to make their appearance. Intense discussions grew up around the various ideas and concepts of the Messiah. Would he become a military leader and a Davidic king? Would he smite the Roman armies as Joshua had the Canaanites? Or would he came to establish a spiritual kingdom? John rather decided with the minority that Jesus had come to establish the kingdom of heaven, although he was not altogether clear in his own mind as to just what was to be embraced within this mission of the establishment of the spiritual kingdom. So John finally decided that it would be a spiritual kingdom that Jesus would bring, not the others. Right, give me a second, y'all. I need to close this out here. These hearing aids here. Okay, since they didn't work tonight for some reason. So John, while Jesus was gone for the 40 days, John was running these things through his mind and trying to keep his disciples straight. And of course, the disciples all wanted to establish themselves as these special roles during this period of time to be up on the totem pole of the leaders. All right, dear, would you take the next?
These were strenuous days in John's Oops, we just switched over, honey. I did. We just what I was reading. That's just
We need to go back a screen.
yeah.
Go forward.
Okay. These were strenuous days in John's experience, and he prayed for the return of Jesus. Some of John's disciples organized scouting parties to go in search of Jesus, but John forbade, saying, Our times are in the hands of the God of heaven. He will direct his chosen son.
You're muted.
I'm muted. They were going to go hunt him down and bring him back. Okay, that's all there was to it. They wouldn't go on without a leader. All right, let's see here. Gary, would you take the next one?
It was only in the morning of Sabbath, February 22nd, that the company of John,
23rd.
23rd, excuse me,
Yeah.
that the company of John, engaged in eating their morning meal, looked up toward the north and beheld Jesus coming to them. As he approached them, John stood upon a large rock and lifting up his
Sonorous voice. Yeah.
said, Behold, the Son of God, the deliverer of the world. Did I do that right?
Yeah, you did good.
This is he of whom I have said, After me there will come one who is preferred before me, because he was before me. For this cause came out for this cause came I out of the wilderness to preach repentance and to baptize with water, proclaiming that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And now comes one who shall baptize you with the Holy Spirit. And I behold the divine Spirit descending upon this man, and I heard the voice of God declare, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased.
So this is John's introduction to Jesus coming back from the 40 days, and there's a picture of this painting. All right. Pam, would you take the next one, please?
Jesus bid them return to their food while he sat down to eat with John, his brothers, James and Jude, having returned to Capernaum.
Okay, you don't get that easily. Take the next one too.
Okay. Early in the morning of the next day, he took leave of John and his disciples, going back to Galilee. He gave them no word as to when they would again see him. To John's inquiries about his own preaching and mission, Jesus only said, My Father will guide you now and in the future, as he has in the past. And these two great men separated that morning on the banks of the Jordan, never again to greet each other in the flesh.
So they never saw each other again after this morning. So John got the privilege of eating with Jesus one morning, and then Jesus left. And so after that, and then he told him, when he asked about what he was supposed to do, he said, my Father will guide you now as he had in the past. And John probably thought, he guided me in the past. So that's the John's journey south. This is the bad part of this paper. The end of the paper is John's death. So we're going to get right into this here. All right, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. 10. John's journey south. Since Jesus had gone north into Galilee, John felt led to retrace his steps southward. Accordingly, on Sunday morning, March the 3rd, John and the remainder of his disciples began their journey south. About 1/4 of John's immediate followers had meantime departed for Galilee in quest of Jesus. There was a sadness of confusion about John. He never again preached as he had before baptizing Jesus. He somehow felt that the responsibility of the coming kingdom was no longer on his shoulders. He felt that his work was almost finished. He was disconsolate and lonely, but he preached, baptized, and journeyed on southward.
So he felt a little confused, right? Because his one mission was to introduce Jesus, and that was done, right? So really, his mission, he felt, was pretty much gone. All right. Near the village of Adam, John tarried for several weeks, and it was here that he made the memorable attack upon Herod Antipas for unlawfully taking the wife of another man. By June of this year, AD 26, John was back at the Bethany ford of the Jordan, where he had begun his preaching of the coming kingdom more than a year previously. In the weeks following the baptism of Jesus, the character of John's preaching gradually changed into the proclamation of mercy for the common people, while he denounced the renewed vehemence. Y'all help me. Vehemence, the corrupt political and religious leaders. So he started working on the leaders rather than just working on everybody's guilt about their sins.
Political message.
Political message, yeah.
It's kind of like criticizing a Clinton.
Right.
Herald Antipas, in whose territory John had been preaching, became alarmed lest he and his disciples should start a rebellion. Herod also resented John's public criticisms of his domestic affairs. In view of all this, Herod decided to put John in prison. Accordingly, very early in the morning of June 12th, before the multitude arrived to hear the preaching and witness the baptizing, the agents of Herod placed John under arrest. As weeks passed and he was not released, his disciples scattered over all Palestine, many of them going into Galilee to join the followers of Jesus.
Okay, so this was in early June, about June 12th. So this is almost exactly 5 to 6 months after his baptizing of Jesus. So his time was very short, right? Right. Gary, would you read this short paragraph?
Yes. 11. John in prison. John had a lonely and somewhat bitter experience in prison. Few of his followers were permitted to see him. He longed to see Jesus, but had to be content with hearing of his work through those of his followers who had become followers of the Son of Man. He was often tempted to doubt Jesus and his divine mission. If Jesus were the Messiah, why did he do nothing to deliver him from this unbearable imprisonment? For more than a year and a half, this rugged man of God's outdoors languished in the despicable prison. In this experience was a great test of his faith and loyalty to Jesus. Indeed, this whole experience was a great test of John's faith, even in God. Many times, as he tempted to doubt even the genuineness of his own mission and experience.
So he was pretty much in the pits of despair, wasn't he? Languishing in prison. And one thing John did not understand, that Jesus was going through the experience of the seventh bestowal. And part of that experience of the seventh bestowal was that Jesus was experiencing life as a human being, not as Michael of Nebadon, wasn't he? So his experiences were all related to his human self, not his divine self. So in essence, Jesus would not have even thought about trying to deliver John from prison, would he? Because this is a purely human experience and has nothing to do with the experience of his seventh bestowal. Okay, so John was on slate to die with very shortly after this, and Jesus realized this because of the preaching of John Sooner or later, someone was going to execute him, and that's exactly what happened. And Jesus understood that. So he expected John to leave the earth very soon. All right. Pamela, would you take the next one?
After he had after he had been in prison several months, a group of his disciples came to him, and after reporting concerning the public activities of Jesus, said, "So you see, teacher, that he who was with you at the upper Jordan prospers and receives all who come to him. He even feasts with publicans and sinners. You bore courageous witness to him, and yet he does nothing to effect your deliverance." But John answered his friends, "This man can do nothing unless it has been given him by his Father in heaven. You well remember that I said, I am not the Messiah, but I am one sent on before to prepare the way for him. And that I did. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. But the friend of the bridegroom who stands nearby and hears him rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. This, my joy, therefore is fulfilled. He must increase, but I must decrease. I am of this earth and have declared my message. Jesus of Nazareth comes down to the earth from heaven and is above us all. The Son of Man has descended from God, and the words of God he will declare
to you.
He will declare to you. For the Father in heaven gives not the Spirit by measure to his own Son. The Father loves his Son and will presently put all things in the hands of this Son. He who believes in the Son has eternal life, and these words which I speak are true and abiding.
So he philosophized his own end, didn't he? Right there. In other words, he was to decrease and Jesus was to increase.
And what's interesting to me is this is his cousin he's talking about.
Right.
So those words did not come from his mind.
No, it came from the thought of just
came to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Had to.
Now, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Yes. These disciples were amazed at John's pronouncement, so much so that they departed in silence. John was also much agitated, for he perceived that he had uttered a prophecy. Never again did he wholly doubt.
It'll come back on. Sorry.
Never again.
It'll come back on its own. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Never again did he wholly doubt the mission and divinity of Jesus. But it was a sore disappointment to John that Jesus sent him no word, that he came not to see him, and that he exercised none of his great power to deliver him from prison. But Jesus knew all about this. He had great love for John, but being now cognizant of his divine nature and knowing fully the great things in preparation for John when he departed from this world, and also knowing that John's work on earth was finished, he constrained himself not to interfere in the natural outworking of the great preacher prophet's career.
Sorry, y'all. Okay, so Jesus knew that John's work was done, and he knew that John would eventually be executed, and he expected this, very soon after all this happened. And he knew that John had a lot of work to do when he got to the mansion world. So he was anxious to let John go on from this life and go on to the mansion world so he could continue his work, right? And so that's why he didn't get him out of prison or he tried to do anything like that. And the fact that he was human. He was not supposed to do these magical, mystical things to get John out of prison. That's just not the way the bestowal was supposed to go. And we have to remember all this is relating to the bestowal itself, right? Okay. This long suspense in prison was humanly unbearable. Just a few days before his death, John again sent trusted messengers to Jesus, inquiring, "Is my work done? Why do I languish in prison? Are you truly the Messiah, or shall we look for another?" And when these two disciples gave this message to Jesus, the Son of Man replied, "Go back to John and tell them that I have not forgotten, but to suffer me also this. For it becomes us all to fulfill all righteousness. Tell John what you have seen and heard, and that the poor have good tidings preached to them. And finally, tell the beloved herald of my earth mission that he shall be abundantly blessed in the age to come, if he finds no occasion to doubt and stumble over me." And this was the last word John received from Jesus. This message greatly comforted him and did much to stabilize his faith and prepare him for the tragic end of his life in the flesh, which followed so soon upon the heels of this memorable occasion. So Jesus knew he was about to be killed, right? And that he just needed to be patient. He knew John would be leaving this world. All right. That's the way it works, right? When your work is done, you're taken home. Diane.
12. Death of John the Baptist. As John was working in southern Peru when arrested, he was taken immediately to the prison of the fortress of Marcellus, where he was incarcerated until his execution. Herald ruled over Perea as well as Galilee, and he maintained residence at this time at both Julius and Macarius and Maria. Thank you. Would you just read this for me? In Galilee, the official residence had been moved from Sepphoris to the new capital at Tiberias.
Always give my wife these wonderful things, right?
Yeah, I did a good job. I'm so pleased.
Okay, Pam, would you take the next?
Yeah. Herod feared to release John lest he instigate rebellion. He feared to put him to death lest the multitude riot in the capital, for thousands of Peres believed that John was a holy man, a prophet. Therefore, Herod kept the Nazarite preacher in prison, not knowing what else to do with him. Several times John had been before Herod, but never would he agree either to leave the domains of Herod or to refrain from all public activities if he were released. And this new agitation concerning Jesus of Nazareth, which was steadily increasing, admonished Herod that it was no time to turn John loose. Besides, John was also a victim of the intense and bitter hatred of Herodias, Herod's unlawful wife.
So John didn't have a chance in the world, did he? He had too much going against him. So it was inevitable that he was to be executed. Rodney, would you take the next?
That's not fair. I thought that was going to be mine, but that's
Oh, Gary, I skipped right over you. I got an arm in your way there.
That's okay.
Will you take this one then, please?
Okay. Thank you. On numerous occasions, Harold talked with John about the kingdom of heaven. And while sometimes seriously impressed with his message, he was afraid to release him from prison.
So Herod was really, curious about what John was talking about, wasn't he? Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rodney, would you take this one?
Yes. Since much building was still going on at Tiberias, Herod spent considerable time at his Perean residence, and he was partial to the fortress of Zacharias. It was a matter of several years before all the public buildings and the official residence at Tiberias was fully completed.
And guess what happened to him eventually?
To Herod?
Yeah,
What?
he died just like we all do. So all this building he did was of naught. In other words, it didn't mean a thing. And that's why we have to be careful about what we build in our lives, right? Because all these material things we build up, these nice, beautiful mansions and all this, are we going to live in them very long?
No.
No, not at all, right? So you got to be careful on what you spend all your time on. If you spend 20 years building a house, working on it every day, do you think that's a good use of your spiritual life? That's a good question, right?
I've been spending 10 years doing that here.
Yeah. I mean, we all do it, right? Let's spend a couple of years building out this house. Of course, we've lived it and we enjoy it, but we don't take it with us, do we? All right. In the celebration of his birthday, Herod made a great feast in the Macarian palace for his chief officers and other men high in the council of the government of Galilee and Perea. Since Herodias had failed to bring about John's death by direct appeal to Herod, she now set herself to the task of having John put to death by cunning planning. My wife gets to explain it to me.
In the course of the evening's festivities and entertainment, Herodes presented her daughter to dance before the banqueters, something like that. Herod was very much pleased with the damsel's performance, and calling her before him, said, "You are charming. I am much pleased with you. Ask me on this my birthday for whatever you desire, and I will give it to you, even to the half of my kingdom." And Herod did all this while well under the influence of his many wines. The young lady drew aside and inquired of her mother what she should ask of Herod. Herodes said, "Go to Herod and ask for the head of John the Baptist." And the young woman, returning to the banquet table, said to Herod, "I request that you forthwith give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter." How gross.
Could you imagine a little girl asking for that?
Well, they don't say how old she is, right?
Well, that's true.
Mm.
A hunch she was.
You're muted, Roger.
I have a hunch she was
Sorry, y'all.
not necessarily a little girl.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
No, she was
16,
probably
18,
16, 18. Yeah, she danced
Yeah, but
before him and
still,
his
what I mean,
lust, overcame
a young
him.
woman.
Yeah, a
asking
young
for the
woman.
head
That's
of
right.
someone?
He was just lusting after her, right? Basically. Okay, Gary, would you take this one, please?
Okay. Herod was filled with fear and sorrow, but because of his oath and because of all those who sat at meat with him, he would not deny the request. And Herod Antipas sent a soldier commanding him to bring the head of John. So was John that night beheaded in the prison, the soldier bringing the head of the prophet on a platter and presenting it to the young woman at the rear of the banquet hall. And the damsel gave the platter to her mother, When John's disciples heard of this, they came to the prison for the body of John, and after laying it in a tomb, they went and told Jesus.
That's about as worst thing that a human being could ever do, right?
Never asked.
And then this
What?
is
Wonder if
pictures.
they got the whole body.
Eventually they probably gave him the the head too, and he was buried.
Together.
Together. So and that's the end of the slideshow. And then next time, let's see here. We will, give me 1 second here. I'm going to read this to you. Go in on paper 136, the baptism and 40 days next time. Gosh, we had a short meeting tonight.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments about John the Baptist before we move on to the actual life of Jesus, really?
I didn't understand the message from Jesus to John when he was in questioning.
Mm-hmm.
There was a sentence that I got confused on. Is there any chance we could go back without it?
Yeah, sure we could. All right. Let me hang on. Let me stop the share and go back to that share. Okay.
Go back
This
and
one, this
yeah,
one here.
yeah.
When it said when he went back and go back and tell John.
Yeah, I have forgotten. I have not forgotten, but to suffer me also this, for it becomes us to fulfill all righteousness. I don't understand that.
Well, basically, what he's saying is that he's not forgotten John, and he realized that John would be executed and that he would soon move on to the mansion worlds. And Jesus did not want to interrupt the normal process of John's life. John had to experience death just like Jesus experienced death. So, this is the normal outcropping of what they were doing during that period of time. So, Jesus knew he would go straight to the mansion worlds, and he had a lot of important work, basically being on the Council of 24 for him in Satania. So Jesus realized John would easily move on to that position. So John was better off in that position than trying to go on this world, trying to play second fiddle to Jesus, basically. Does that make sense?
So John had basically an appropriate position up on high to say.
Yeah.
Jesus knew it, although John probably did not.
John did not. And so he wanted to make it possible for John to move on to his new position on the Council of 24. And he could not do that without dying, right? And
I think you're right there. I've failed to get to heaven yet.
yeah, me either. And he knew John was not ready to fuse with his adjuster. So the only way he could get there is to die. Okay. And so Jesus would refuse to go on and interrupt the normal process of John's life, just like he refused to interrupt his own life process when they were getting ready to crucify him.
That makes sense as to why he let him linger and suffer.
Yeah, yeah, it does. Because all these things are what? Temporary. Temporary past the point of ridiculousness. And you say, what the heck are you talking about, Roger? It's temporary in the sense that if you look at Michael's 7 bestowals, which took 1 billion years, we're not talking 100 years, we're talking 1 billion years, with 150 million years in between each bestowal. Think about that time period. That's a long, long, long time, right? So this little piddly life that we have of 80 or 100 years at most is really like a drop in the bucket or a blink in the human life. And that's exactly what it is, because the human life is a blink. It's an instant of time that goes by so fast, we can't even wrap our minds around it. And the thing that we can't wrap our minds around even more is living through eternity. Could you imagine living through the 7 bestowals of Michael, 1,000,000,000 years? That's like, what? You know? That's like waking up. It was kind of remind me of that movie. What is it? Groundhog Day, where the guy wakes up. It's the
Yeah.
same thing over and over and over and over and over and over. That's kind of the way our lives are. It's the same thing over and over and over. We deal with the same problems over and over and over again. And we're so stupid, we can't learn anything in that process of doing it over and over and over and over again. You know? So why do you think we have idiots like me that get up and try to beat it in people's brains that they need to think about their spiritual welfare and their spiritual life, because this life means nothing without the spiritual aspect of it. That's what that boils down to. Okay? It's really weird because, you know, when things like this come up, I always refer back to what I did today. I worked on chapter 11 of our Jesus Who, What, When, and Where, and polished off my little podcast for that. And I went through all these things we just talked about, you know, the 7 bestowals of Jesus, how much time it takes, and how we don't realize we don't have a concept of time in this lifetime, because it's so short. That's what it boils down to. But when you're going through it, it seems like a long, long time, doesn't it?
No. Seeing
Yeah.
I'm one of the older ones here, I can still tell you that I cannot conceive that I'm of the age I am.
Yeah, well, I feel the same way. I really do. It's as it keeps going by faster and faster, the more you realize how quickly it goes. And Diane and I were over dealing with my mother, who's 91, going to be 91 another month. And she's failing fast, you know. And when you see this stuff going on in front of you, it becomes frustrating to you, because we have no control over anything when it boils down to it, right? When we get to our end of days, things happen to us in which number one, we can't control, and number two, we have no say in, when it boils right down to it. And that's the way the end of life works. And that is really what happened to John. And that is really what happened to Jesus. When he went to the cross, he had no say in that, because he had to finish his life in the normal way of a human being, and things worked out to work just like it did because of evil men in the Sanhedrin, right? So he ended up murder, and he could not stop his own murder without stepping outside of his own bestowal experience, which he was not going to do.
I also believe he did not particularly worship that upon himself, because when he was praying to God in Gethsemane, I believe it is.
Yosemite. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If this cup could pass by me.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
That's
exactly right. He prayed the same things we would. Father, if this cup could pass by me, please make it so. You know, I mean, if you think about it, if you knew you were going to be crucified in the worst horrible way possible, wouldn't you ask to be excused from it? I would.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And in essence, think about it this way, guys. When we're on those last few days of life, if we're suffering in some kind of disease or losing our mind or whatever, wouldn't you rather just go on rather than have to suffer through it?
I think that's very common with dying people.
Yes, it is. That's why we have organizations like hospice and things like that to help people make it through it, right? It's a sad thing, but it has to happen. It's part of life. Death is part of life, unfortunately. Who feels led to read our prayer of acceptance?
I'll do it if you don't mind, or
I
somebody
don't
else.
mind at all. Please do.
Okay. Prayer of acceptance. I believe that God is my paradise Father, and that only by faith am I saved. No sacrifice is necessary. By this same faith, I became a child of God and know that all men and women are my brothers and sisters. We know the Son of God, the sovereign of our universe in Lebanon, as Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. By allowing the will of God to become my will, I will someday stand in the presence of the Paradise Father. In the name of Christ Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen.
Okay, folks, this is the beginning, the end of the pre-Jesus experience, pre-ministry experience. And next time we're moving into the ministry experience of Jesus,
Public
one of the
ministry.
most important things that we can read, right?
Public ministry.
Public ministry. That's right. And the
Yeah.
divinity of Christ comes out in this in great detail because after the baptism, Jesus knew wholeheartedly who he was, but he stepped into this full of his divinity, and yet he did it all as a human being, not a divine entity. Okay. So what we're about to read is continuation of the human Jesus's reaction to trying to reveal divinity and the Father's love to all his children. So it's one of the most important things we'll ever read. It's a very important part. Right?
I wonder if Christians would read the part we're about to read, the effect it would have upon them. Three additional questions I'm referring
Yeah.
to.
Mm-hmm. Well, if they would do it open-mindedly, it would expand their idea and the concepts of the personality of Christ tremendously, wouldn't it?
It would help them understand the Bible better.
It would, by leaps and bounds,
It
right?
helps my mother with the Bible.
Yeah, it does. Helps everyone. You can't, there's no way around it, right? It helps every single soul. All right, y'all.
Thank you,
I
Roger.
am.
Yes,
You're
thank you,
welcome.
Roger.
Yeah, thanks, Rod.
Yeah, you guys are great for sticking it in there with me. I saw every single one of your faces on the paper from 2011. Let me tell you a little secret. I went out there when I was working on chapter 11 for the podcast today, and the video of me, the audio of me on chapter 11 is so bad, you just almost can't understand anything I say. And yet somehow I've transposed it into a beautiful podcast today. But it was funny because every one of your faces were there with me in 2023 when I did this. So thanks for hanging in there with me all this time. You know.
I
All
still
right.
Look forward to next time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Love you.
Night.
See you all next time. All right. Have a good one.